However, we did make up for it. And I was so proud of the fact that we had an incredibly masterful first sergeant who treated us as though we were like gold, because he said, as blacks, we have to do this, we have to march better, stronger, faster, whatever. And that, I think some of that rubbed off and has stayed with me over the years. It also led me to do a little digging into history about black soldiers, and I eventually wrote a book, which I was lucky enough to go on to win an award with it, for the book, which was called Farewell to the Mockingbirds. And Farewell to the Mockingbirds tells a story about the blacks when they first got into the Army in 1917 at the outbreak of World War I. And the trouble with the United States at that time, they did not know what they wanted to do with the 5,000 black soldiers in its ranks. And one of the outfits, the 24th Infantry, which, and ironically enough, I ended up in that outfit some 50 years later, they were stationed in Columbus, New Mexico, and eventually they went to Houston, Texas. When they arrived in Houston, Texas, they were subjected to all the racist moves that some of you good Texans are known for today. So, in the Army, they had a crap game a week after they arrived there, and in the process of having that crap game, the police came to break up the game, to break up the game, and in the process it killed a soldier, and the rest of the soldiers heard about it, and they raced back to camp to say, we got to do something about this. We're not going to take this from the police. We are soldiers in the Army of the United States, and nobody killed one of our people and get away with it. And so they marched on the city of Houston that night. They killed something, I can't remember the figures now, but it was around 34 or 37 people. And then they promptly marched back to camp to take their punishment. And their punishment was indeed swift. The Army of the United States tried 63 men in a matter of 27 days, found all of them guilty, and then sentenced 13 of them to hang. The thing that I found so extraordinary about the subject is that cold morning in December, as they stood on the gallows, in order for them to look like soldiers, with the ropes around their necks, they rehearsed their execution. And the first sergeant gave the command to move up to to where the trap doors were 3 times. And on the 3rd time, they got it right. And then he said, let's go home. And they marched forward 2 more paces, and they died. And so I never forgot that, and I was privileged enough to have a first sergeant like that, who instilled the pride that those guys had in us. Now, to go back to where I started, we left Japan in 1950, and in July, they had, the Army froze all discharges because of the Korean War. Well, having spent 3 years in the Army and without tasting combat or anything like that, I decided I would re-enlist because the Army had frozen all the discharges, to repeat myself. And I wanted to go to war. I mean, we'd been trained as blacks to go and fight, and so I wanted to fight. So eventually I re-enlisted and ended up in Korea, and ended up in the 2nd Infantry Division, and promptly got wounded, very, very severely, I might add. You know, and I still have a bullet in the stomach and the shrapnel in the hip and in the legs. I say this because everywhere I go, I notice that there is a lack of black participation when it comes to veterans activities, and that's not Mr. Charlie's fault, which is a euphemism for the whites. It's not their fault. It's that we as blacks, we have to learn to participate and to let the country know that we fought and died just like everybody else. And I think that is a fault that is practiced in all communities. After getting wounded, I came back here to the United States, and the Army was partially segregated at that time. Our outfit and the 2nd was. And when we landed at, I think it was Fort Lawton or Fort Lewis, Washington, we had to catch a plane to go back. The Army, they would discharge you. All the guys going east would get on this plane. The guys going west would get on the other plane, or north, whatever. And one plane that was headed west, I believe it was, crashed. And they had this incredible, because the weather was so bad, and so they grounded us in a place called Butte, Montana. Now, we were from the front lines, and when our plane landed, because of the fact that we couldn't travel any further because of the bad weather, the Army wanted us to stay in Butte, Montana, and therefore they found us a hotel. Now, the hotel said, fine, we will accept these soldiers. They accepted the soldiers until they found out that we were black soldiers, and then when we got, actually showed up and made our appearance after leaving the airport, made our appearance there in the lobby of the hotel, the clerk said, no way are we going to allow these people here to stay at this hotel. I was still bleeding. I mean, not necessarily, not bleeding bad, but, still hurting and all the rest of that nonsense. And one of the guys, the radical, said, listen, we're going to throw a hand grenade in this place here if you don't let us black soldiers stay here. I'm going to tell you that right now. Well, there were a couple of white fellows with us who says, now listen, it's not necessary to do that, we'll handle it. And these guys were ready, 2 or 3 whites were ready to take on the whole goddamn hotel simply because they would not let us blacks stay there. But finally, sanity prevailed, and the Army quite logically found us a place to stay, and a black hotel, and we ended up going back to our individual hometowns. So my experience in the Army was indeed very, very good, and as I said at the outset, after having seen the world, been with the president and everything else that could possibly happen to a person, you can erase anything from my life, but do not take away that moment of having served in the Army of the United States of America. Thank you much.
Thanks, Jim. Gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, we have a few minutes if anybody would like to ask any questions of the panelists.
Jim, tell us about your Silver Star.
The Silver Star was something I really don't, is this live?
Yep, that's right.
The Silver Star, to be quite honest about it, is something I really don't think I deserve. And I think, well, first of all, the Army was 55 years late in giving it to me or something like that. And I happened to be doing something, and Congressman Dreyer heard about it, and he said, and I said, I don't recall getting any medals, and so he put his staff to work on it to find out if I indeed earned what medals I had earned. And lo and behold, they came back with this idea that I had been awarded the Silver Star. But the story is quite interesting. We were on a patrol one night, and there were a 13-man patrol to a search and rescue mission. We encountered fire, a very heavy fire, and my lieutenant that was in charge of the patrol was a guy, big red-headed guy by the name of Lieutenant Shank, probably the most brave, was the bravest, unquestionably the bravest man I'd ever met in my life. As the enemy started, as we walked into this trap, which was a trap, and probably because of bad planning on our part, it was just, we walked into a horseshoe and they just annihilated us, destroyed us. And Lieutenant Shank took a position over there. I was point man, took a position just left and forward of me, and he just kept firing and firing. I can't do that.
Sir, I'm Young Marine Corporal Grayson. I have one quick question for you all.
Speak up, please.
Sorry. I'm Young Marine Corporal Grayson from the Quantico Young Marines. And I had one quick question for both of the panel members. My question was, having served in the military and having gone through what you have, which is a lot, I must say, can you give any advice to the younger people in this room, or anybody in general, as to how to progress through life, how to move on from here?
Let me answer just a little bit of that.